My name is Kim Peters, and I'm here to present on productive and counterproductive behaviors in the workplace. As defined in Chapter 1 of our textbook, organizational psychology is a scientific study of individual and group behavior in formal organizational settings. Question 1 pertains to recent historical events how they have affected the course of research in organizational psychology. One that has affected research would have to be the pandemic, not for what it was at the time, but the ramifications since then, 4 years later. Focusing specifically on RTO, which is return to office, that factor of the job market in its current state is in a bit of shambles. Personally, I go into the office 3+ days a week. When it became a requirement that I went into the office 3+ days a week, it was to collaborate. At the time, I was in a different business unit, one that I never saw any of my team. So the reasoning as to why we needed to be in the office was non-sequential. It didn't mean anything. Now, in the new business unit I'm in an office setting, so I'm able to go into the office 3+ days. But out of the 3 directors I support, I see one, maybe once a week. I correspond on Slack and Chime. All my meetings are on Chime. None of my team is in office. So this is a hot topic that continues to burn. It looks to be a focus within organizational psychology for quite a while, as I found an article in apa.org called Reworking Work. And in that article, much of what was studied was how workers feel about having to return, what measures can be taken within organizations to show the value in work-from-home situations, and how employers should find a common value when having their teams come in, such as not randomly picking 3 days a week and instead having them all come in at the same time so that they can all be on the same calls in the same room together, as opposed to some on Chime and some in office. Research is continuing on this subject. Question 2. Describe the socialization process for graduate students in your program. Is the program successful in socializing newcomers and creating job embeddedness? In Chapter 3, the focus is attraction and socialization, starting from the recruiting side through to training and onward. As it pertains to the question, it seems a bit challenging to know how well the graduate students in this program have done with the socialization process, since everything is done online. Now, we do have discussion posts that we go in and we write, and then we respond to 1 to 2 of our classmates. In my experience, when I do this, I have found that I can ask a question within somebody's discussion post and not get a response. So the interaction, the socialization, isn't there as much as you would hope. However, there is Facebook groups, and I do see a lot of socialization and attention to everyone's success. Now, the program overall, it really does go into detail about what we could expect in the field. This being my first semester at this school, I will tell you that I definitely am learning what is needed in this field. And it can be successful in socializing newcomers, but as to creating job embeddedness, I can only take this as students completing the program. As to that, there needs to be discipline when it comes to online participation, especially in a master's degree and up. So those that choose to go this route would need to be focused on the end goal, which is graduating with their degree. I did deep dive a bit and found a Forbes article that reported that 33.7% of the 94,000 students that they surveyed completed their master's degree online in the year 21-22. 3. How can an organization reduce or prevent work-family conflict? Referring back to the discussion in the beginning, return to office is a topic that has continued into 2024 as to the need. Both the article as well as our textbook have discussed ways to reduce or prevent. Some ways would be instituting work-family policies, such as daycare on site, flex time, job sharing. While the article describes leadership placing a focus not on the time in the office, but rather the impact they're making with their work. So is there really a need to be in the office? We still need to see. More focus from workers on questioning having to return, knowing the quality of life they have when fully remote, while still completing their job. And I've heard this a number of times. I will say personally, when I am home the 2 days out of my 5 that I work, I do tend to get a lot more done because there's less distractions. It's just myself in front of my computer. So it's quiet and I get a lot done. Now, they're having conversations about reducing the amount of hours per week worked from 40 hours to 32, which could help create a better balance for people with both work and family obligations. In March of 2024, it showed that Bernie Sanders actually submitted a bill to Congress along these lines. 4. Imagine you've been asked to develop a performance assessment program for employee development. What techniques could you use to adequately evaluate employee performance as comprehensively as possible? Think of Murphy's List, which is actually a really interesting model. And Murphy's model was broken down into 4 components, and it was observing the U.S. Navy, but it was meant to also observe those outside of the military. Task-oriented, interpersonal, downtime, and destructive hazardous behaviors. If I were asked to develop a program, I would take a look at each component and expand on it. First, observations and the interactions. Something that I do find that I have a strength is being able to observe a situation before taking any action. How are the workers with their leaders? Is there a good interaction? Is there talk? How are the coworkers with coworkers? Same thing. Create a survey to see what information can be deemed from those on the front line as well as leadership. Boots on the ground is the best way to get the information that you need to be able to create a successful program, because those are the ones that they affect, including our leaders. Now, the survey would be anonymous, so there would be no worries as to being outed for saying something that might not be what somebody else might want to hear, especially upper management. Once the information is compiled, I would take the time to create a program that can benefit both sides. I feel like sometimes we place too much of a focus on the employees and not enough of a focus on leadership. I always say it starts at the top. And if our leaders are not taught how to lead properly and with intent, and the only focus that they have is on cost and making their numbers, it would never be a successful program because they're not looking at the person. They're not looking at the people that are actually doing the work. I would construct a program plan to best suit all, and then have a monthly check-in to turn into a quarterly check-in. And within that time, I would utilize the feedback that I get as to how the program is working. Is it successful? Is there some tweaking? Are there some things that they're hearing that would make a better difference in order to make this more successful for the employees and leadership? Next, what are some possible common organizational constraints and how could they lead to counterproductive behaviors? Well, common constraints that I have seen in my time at my current job would be the cost-cutting methods, which could include layoffs. In my company, we've had over 50,000 layoffs since 2023. The shock to that is this company has never laid anybody off. So while some were expected, some were not. The lack of direction. Which way are we going? Like, we want to worry about costs, but do we want to make sure that we're taking care of our people? Are we people-centric? Are we cost-centric? Poor or non-existent leadership. If a leader doesn't know how to lead themselves, then they're going to know how to lead a team. if they're a bully when they lead, if they use their position to have the power yet not do anything constructive with it, that can make a difference. And then low pay. The way this can lead to counterproductive behaviors, absenteeism, which could be twofold. They could have personal obligations that are conflicting with work and vice versa. Fear of having a job due to cost cuts and layoffs, which could be an offset of employee theft. Get them before they get me. It could be something as simple as taking a ream of paper or a pencil and then working their way up. Because if they're going to let me go, I might as well get something out of this. All this time I've devoted to them. Workplace violence. Abusive or non-existent leadership can result in harmful ramifications. This is a factor one is faced with more today than ever. Violence seems to be the answer to all frustrations, and unfortunately innocent lives pay. And a side note to that is our mental health. We went from a time 4 years ago where everything was shut down. People were with themselves. And that could be good for some and not for others. Now the expectation is they need to come back into the fold. They need to interact, engage with others. Sometimes that can be hard for them as well. And then with low pay comes lack of willingness to make an effort. Many a TikTok video out there that's telling you to act your wage, work your wage, creating an environment that can be very counterproductive and in some cases harmful to others who just want to do their job and get through their day. Thank you for listening. This concludes my presentation on productive and counterproductive behaviors in the workplace.